The bitter wind cut through Clara's woolen shawl as she loaded the last of her belongings onto the rickety wagon. Dawn hadn't yet broken over Redemption Creek, and she preferred it that way. Fewer eyes to watch her leave. Fewer tongues to wag about the widow Whitmore fleeing town in the dead of winter. Her gloved hands trembled as she secured the canvas covering, though whether from cold or the secret growing within her belly, she couldn't say. 3 months had passed since that night, that terrible, wonderful night that had shattered everything she thought she knew about herself. The memory burned like whiskey in her throat, hot and shameful and impossible to swallow down. She climbed onto the driver's seat, her breath forming clouds in the frigid air. The old mare, Buttercup, stamped her hooves impatiently. Even the horse seemed eager to leave this place behind. "Get on, then," Clara whispered, flicking the reins. The wagon lurched forward, wheels creaking against the frozen dirt road. As Redemption Creek disappeared behind her, Clara didn't look back. There was nothing left for her there, just the charred remains of the homestead where her husband had died, and the judgmental stares of townspeople who whispered about the young widow who'd been seen stumbling from the church social 3 months ago, her dress askew and her reputation in tatters. The mountain pass loomed ahead, a narrow thread of road carved between towering peaks. Locals called it Devil's Gate, and in summer it was treacherous enough. In winter, only the desperate or foolish attempted it. Clara figured she was both. By midday, snow had begun to fall in earnest, fat, heavy flakes that stuck to everything they touched. The road grew slick beneath Buttercup's hooves, and Clara had to grip the reins tight to keep her hands from shaking. The higher she climbed, the worse it got. Wind howled through the canyon, driving snow sideways into her face. She should have waited for spring, should have swallowed her pride and shame and stayed in town until the passes cleared. But every day she remained was another day closer to her secret becoming visible. Another day for the good Christian women of Redemption Creek to count backward on their fingers and whisper about poor Clara Whitmore and what she'd done. The wagon wheel caught on something, a rock hidden beneath the snow, or perhaps a rut carved by earlier travelers. Clara felt the sudden lurch, heard the sickening crack of wood splintering. Then she was falling, the world tilting sideways as the wagon overturned. She hit the ground hard, snow cushioning her fall, but not enough to prevent the sharp pain that shot through her shoulder. The wagon crashed beside her, supplies scattering across the white landscape like offerings to an angry god. Buttercup's frightened whinny pierced the air before the mare broke free of her traces and disappeared into the swirling white. Clara tried to push herself up, but her left arm wouldn't cooperate. The pain made her vision blur, dark spots dancing at the edges. Snow continued to fall, already beginning to cover the scattered remnants of her former life. "Help," she whispered, though she knew no one would hear. The pass was empty, had been empty for weeks, according to the stableman who'd tried to talk her out of this journey. "Please, someone." The cold seeped through her clothes, numbing her fingers and toes. She managed to crawl a few feet toward the overturned wagon, hoping to find shelter beneath it, but her strength gave out. The snow beneath her was soft, almost welcoming. It would be so easy to close her eyes, to let the white silence take her. As consciousness faded, Clara's last thought was of the life growing inside her, the child who would never know its father, never understand the desperate passion that had created it. Perhaps it was better this way. Cleaner. The snow would cover everything, and come spring, no one would remember Clara Whitmore or her shame. Taza Redhawk moved through the storm like a ghost, his moccasined feet finding purchase where others would slip. He'd lived in these mountains for 7 winters now, ever since the army had driven him from the reservation, branded him a troublemaker for refusing to forget the old ways. The elk tracks he'd been following were nearly obliterated by fresh snow, but Taza's eyes caught other signs. Broken branches, disturbed drifts. He was close. His family needed meat, and this storm would pass soon enough for him to pack it back to his shelter. Then he saw something that made him freeze. Wheel ruts, fresh enough that snow hadn't filled them completely. His jaw tightened. No one with sense traveled the pass this late in the season. White settlers, always pushing where they didn't belong, always taking risks they didn't understand. He almost turned away. Let the mountain claim them. It wasn't his concern, but his grandmother's voice echoed in his memory. Speaking of the old ways, when helping a traveler in need was sacred duty, even if that traveler was white, even if their kind had taken everything from his people. Taza followed the tracks, moving swiftly now. The wind brought him the scent of spilled grain and something else, blood, faint but unmistakable. Around a bend, he found the wreckage. The wagon lay on its side like a dead beetle. Supplies scattered everywhere, flour sacks split open, their contents mixing with the snow. And there, half buried already, a figure in a dark dress. A woman, alone. Taza approached cautiously, his hand instinctively moving to the knife at his belt. It could be a trap. He'd learned never to trust appearances where whites were concerned. But as he drew closer, he saw the pale face, the lips already tinged blue, the absolute stillness that spoke of approaching death. He knelt beside her, brushing snow from her face. Young, perhaps 25 winters, pretty, in the way of white women, with honey-colored hair escaping from beneath her bonnet. Her breathing was shallow, barely visible in the cold air. Taza sat back on his heels, considering. He could leave her. No one would know. The storm would hide everything. And he had his own people to think of, his sister's children, hungry and depending on him. But when he placed his hand on her throat to check for life, her eyes fluttered open, green as spring grass, unfocused but aware. Her lips moved, no sound coming out, but he read the shape of the word, please. Cursing in both Apache and English, Taza made his decision. He couldn't carry much, the woman and perhaps a few of her supplies. The rest would have to be left for the mountain to claim. He fashioned a travois from the wagon's remains, working quickly as the storm intensified. The woman drifted in and out of consciousness, muttering words he couldn't understand. When he lifted her onto the makeshift carrier, she cried out, clutching at her left shoulder. "Be still," he said, though he doubted she understood. His English was functional but harsh, learned from traders and soldiers rather than teachers. "I take you somewhere warm." The journey back to his shelter took hours. The travois caught on rocks and roots hidden beneath the snow, forcing him to lift and carry it over obstacles. The woman's weight, slight as it was, made each step a challenge. But Taza had carried heavier burdens, both physical and otherwise. His shelter sat tucked into a grove of pines, invisible unless you knew where to look. It wasn't much, a structure of logs and mud, topped with pine boughs and now snow, but it was warm and dry. Smoke rose from the center opening, dissipating quickly in the storm. Inside. His sister Mary looked up from tending the fire, her eyes widening at the sight of him dragging a travois with a white woman on it. "Taza, what have you done?" she whispered in Apache. "What needed doing?" he replied. "Maneuvering the unconscious woman inside. Help me with her." Together they transferred Clara to a pile of furs near the fire. Mary's children, a boy of 7 and a girl of 5, peered out from their sleeping area, eyes huge with curiosity and fear. "She's hurt," Mary said, her hands already moving to examine the woman. "Shoulders separated, maybe broken, and cold, too cold." She looked at her brother. "This is dangerous. If the whites find out we have her." "They won't," Taza said firmly. "The storm will hide our tracks. When she heals, she goes." Mary didn't look convinced, but she began working to save the white woman's life. They stripped her wet clothes, replacing them with fur robes. Mary manipulated the injured shoulder, earning a cry of pain from their patient, even in unconsciousness. They spooned warm broth between her blue lips, hoping her body would remember how to swallow. As the night wore on and the storm raged outside, Taza found himself studying the woman's face in the firelight. There was something about her, a sadness that went deeper than her current predicament. He'd seen that look before, in the eyes of his people forced from their lands, in his own reflection after the soldiers had finished with him. She carried secrets. This woman, pain that had nothing to do with her injured shoulder or her near-freezing. And despite himself, despite every lesson the world had taught him about trusting whites, Taza found himself curious about her story. But curiosity was dangerous. He'd saved her because the old ways demanded it. Nothing more. When the storm passed and she healed, she would leave. She had to. Anything else would bring disaster to them all. The fever broke on the third day. Clara's eyes opened slowly, adjusting to the dim light filtering through smoke hole above. For a moment, she couldn't place where she was. The smell of wood smoke and tanned hide, the rough texture of fur against her skin, the low murmur of voices speaking in a language she didn't recognize. Then memory crashed back. The storm, the wagon overturning, the endless white that had nearly claimed her. She tried to sit up, but pain shot through her shoulder, forcing a gasp from her lips. Immediately, a figure appeared beside her, a woman with dark hair braided long, wearing a simple dress of deer hide. "No move," the woman said in accented English. "Shoulder hurt bad. You rest." Clara's heart raced. Indians. She was in an Indian dwelling. Every story she'd heard in Redemption Creek flooded back. Tales of captured white women, of savagery, and worse. But the woman's hands were gentle as she helped Clara drink from a wooden cup, the liquid bitter but warming. Where am I?" Clara managed to whisper. "Safe," another voice answered. Male, deep. Clara turned her head to see him standing in the shadows, tall, broad-shouldered, with hair black as coal and eyes that seemed to see right through her. "Storm nearly kill you. I bring you here." The man who'd saved her. Clara studied him, trying to reconcile the savage of frontier tales with the person who'd pulled her from certain death. Scars marked his face, one across his left eyebrow, another along his jaw. His expression was unreadable, neither kind nor cruel. "Thank you," she said, because what else was there to say? He nodded once, then spoke to the woman in their language. She responded sharply, gesturing at Clara, and even without understanding the words, Clara could hear the argument. The woman was worried, perhaps angry. The man's responses were shorter, final. Days blended together. Clara learned the woman's name was Mary. The man's was Taza. The children, Little Wolf and Singing Bird, gradually lost their fear of her, creeping closer each day to stare at her pale skin and light hair. Mary tended Clara's shoulder with poultices that smelled of pine and something earthy, movements efficient but not unkind. Taza kept his distance mostly, leaving at dawn and returning at dusk with game or firewood. But Clara felt his presence always, a watchful guardian who'd saved her life for reasons she couldn't fathom. As she grew stronger, restlessness set in. She couldn't stay here forever, couldn't continue accepting their hospitality when every meal she ate meant less for the children. But where would she go? Her wagon was destroyed, her horse gone, her money and belongings scattered across a mountainside. One evening, while Mary took the children to gather water, Clara found herself alone with Taza. He sat near the fire, working on arrow points with practiced movements. The silence stretched between them. Not quite comfortable, but not hostile either. "Your family," Clara ventured. "They don't want me here." Taza's hands didn't pause in their work. "Mary, my sister, she fears for children. I understand. I don't want to bring trouble to you. Trouble finds us anyway," he said, and there was a weight to the words that spoke of experience. "White soldiers. They come sometimes, looking for Apaches who won't stay on reservation. Is that why you're here, hiding?" His hands stilled then, and he looked at her directly. "Not hiding, living. This our land before lines on white man's maps." Clara felt heat rise to her cheeks. "I didn't mean, you speak truth as you know it." Taza interrupted. "It's not your fault you know only white truth." They lapsed into silence again. Clara watched him work, noticed the scars on his hands that matched those on his face. Evidence of violence survived. Battles fought. When he shifted position, his shirt pulled tight across his back, and she glimpsed more scars there through the fabric. "My husband died 6 months ago," she heard herself say. "In a fire. They said it was an accident, but—" She trailed off, unsure why she was telling him this. "But you think different," Taza finished. "He had enemies, men who wanted our land. After he died, they expected me to sell, to go back east where I came from, when I wouldn't." She shrugged, then winced as the movement pulled at her shoulder. "So you run?" "Yes. Running not always weak," Taza said, "sometimes his only way to survive." That night, Clara lay awake listening to the wind outside. Mary and the children slept peacefully, but she could hear Taza moving about, adding wood to the fire, checking the door covering, standing guard. She realized, protecting them all from dangers she probably couldn't imagine. The next morning brought clear skies and brutal cold. Taza announced he would check the pass, see if any of Clara's belongings could be salvaged. Mary protested. The danger, the risk of being seen, but he went anyway. Clara spent the day learning to do small tasks one-handed. Mary showed her how to grind corn, how to mend tears and hide clothing. The children taught her words in Apache, giggling at her pronunciation. For a few hours, she almost forgot she didn't belong here. Taza returned at sunset, carrying a flour sack over his shoulder. Inside were some of Clara's things, a few pieces of clothing, her mother's Bible, a small wooden box she kept her valuables in. Everything else was gone, buried or scattered. "Thank you," Clara said, clutching the Bible to her chest. It smelled of damp and cold, but it was hers. "Found this too," Taza said, producing something from his pouch. Her wedding ring, the gold band her husband had placed on her finger 3 years ago. Clara stared at it, remembering another life, another woman who'd worn it. "I don't want it," she said suddenly. Could you trade it? For supplies? To pay for what I've eaten?" Taza's expression shifted, something like understanding crossing his features. "You keep, maybe need later." "I won't go back," Clara said fiercely. "There's nothing for me there. Then where you go?" The question hung in the air. Clara had no answer. No family back east who would take her in. No friends who wouldn't ask questions about why she'd fled in winter. And soon, her condition would be obvious to anyone who looked. That thought made her touch her belly unconsciously, a gesture that didn't escape Taza's notice. His eyes narrowed slightly, and Clara felt heat flood her face. Did he know? Could he tell? But he said nothing, just handed her the ring and went to speak with Mary in low tones. Clara caught her own name several times, saw Mary gesture toward her with obvious concern. That night, Clara's dreams were troubled. She was back in Redemption Creek, in the church social hall, everything bathed in golden lamplight and sin. She woke, gasping, skin damp with sweat despite the cold. The fire had burned low, casting dancing shadows on the walls. Taza sat near the door, a rifle across his knees. He glanced at her when she stirred but didn't speak. Clara pulled the furs tighter around herself, trying to slow her racing heart. "Bad dream," she whispered, not sure why she felt the need to explain. "Dreams tell us what we fear," he said quietly. "What you fear." Clara Whitmore. The sound of her full name on his lips was strange, formal yet intimate. "Everything," she admitted. "Being found, not being found. The future, the past. Cannot change past. Future comes whether we fear or not. Only now matters." "It's not that simple." "No," he agreed. "Is not." They sat in companionable silence as the fire crackled. Outside, something howled, wolf or wind. Clara couldn't tell, but inside felt safe, protected. She watched Taza's profile in the dim light, the strong lines of his face, the steady watchfulness that never seemed to waver. "Why did you save me?" she asked. "You could have left me. No one would have known." He was quiet so long she thought he wouldn't answer. Then, "Long ago, my grandmother saved white trader lost in storm. Trader live, go back to his people. Later, when soldiers come, let trader speak for us. Say we good Indians, peaceful. Soldiers listen. Leave us alone one more season." He shifted slightly. "Grandmother say the mountain remembers kindness. Good deed travels far, like ripples in water." "But the soldiers came eventually anyway." "Yes, But one more season we were free. Sometimes that's all we can ask. One more season. Clara thought about that as drowsiness crept back over her. One more season. One more day. Perhaps that was all anyone could hope for. As she drifted off, she thought she heard Taza humming, a low, haunting melody that seemed to hold all the sorrow and strength of his people. Tomorrow she would have to think about leaving, about where to go and how to survive. But tonight, in this strange shelter with these unexpected protectors, she was safe. For one more night, that was enough. The morning dawned crisp and clear, ice crystals glittering on every surface. Taza had left before sunrise to check his trap lines, taking Little Wolf with him to teach the boy hunting ways. Clara helped Mary prepare breakfast, grinding corn with her good arm while Mary tended the fire. "Your shoulder better," Mary observed, watching Clara work. "You strong woman, heal fast. Thanks to you." Clara replied, "Your medicines work well." Mary smiled, a rare expression that transformed her usually serious face. Apache medicine old, from grandmothers of grandmothers, white doctors. They cut and bleed. We heal. They worked in comfortable silence until Singing Bird came running, eyes wide with excitement. She chattered in Apache, pointing toward the door. Mary frowned, moving to peer outside. "Taza, return early," she said, and Clara heard the concern in her voice. Moments later, Taza entered, supporting his weight on a makeshift crutch. His left leg was bloodied, leather leggings torn. Little Wolf followed, trying to look brave but clearly shaken. "What happened?" Mary demanded in English, already moving to examine the wound. "Ice on rocks," Taza said through gritted teeth. "Fell, like foolish boy. Not hunter." Clara fetched water while Mary cut away the damaged leather. The gash ran deep along his calf, edges jagged from whatever rock had caused it. Taza's face remained stoic, but Clara saw his hands clench when Mary cleaned the wound. "Need stitching," Mary announced. She looked at Clara. "You know?" Clara's heart jumped. Yes, my husband taught me. He was apprenticed to a doctor before we married." Mary nodded, producing a bone needle and sinew thread. "My hands shake when his family. You do." Clara's own hands trembled as she accepted the implements. She'd stitched wounds before. Ranch life demanded such skills, but never on someone who'd saved her life. Taza watched her with those dark, unreadable eyes. "This will hurt," she warned. "Pain, nothing new," he said simply. She worked carefully, trying to ignore the warmth of his skin under her fingers, the way his muscles tensed with each passage of the needle. He never made a sound, though sweat beaded on his forehead. Little Wolf watched with fascination, while Mary prepared poultices. "There," Clara said finally, tying off the last stitch. "It should heal clean if you keep it wrapped." Taza examined her work with approval. "You have good hands. Steady." The compliment made her flush. She busied herself cleaning up while Mary applied her medicines and wrapped the leg. But she remained acutely aware of Taza's presence, of the way he moved despite the injury, still graceful as a mountain cat. That evening, with Taza unable to hunt, Clara insisted on contributing more to the household work. She helped Mary prepare a stew from dried meat and roots, learned to bank the fire properly for the night. The children showed her a game with marked stones, laughing when she lost repeatedly. "You let them win," Taza observed from where he reclined against a backrest of furs. "Perhaps," Clara admitted with a smile. "They remind me of my sister's children back in Ohio." "You miss them?" It wasn't a question, but Clara answered anyway. "Sometimes, but that was another life. Before Samuel, before—" She trailed off, unwilling to voice the rest. "Before you become different person." Taza finished. "I understand this. Once I was son of chief, would be chief after him. Now—" He gestured around the small shelter. "Now I am only Taza." "Only?" Clara shook her head. "You're a provider, a protector, an uncle. That's not only anything." He studied her with those penetrating eyes. "You see clear for white woman. I'm learning that what I thought I knew about the world was very limited." Clara said, My husband used to say that travel broadens the mind, but he meant going to Boston or Philadelphia. He never imagined. She gestured helplessly. Never imagined breaking bread with savage Apache, Taza said, but there was wry humor in his voice. You're not savage, Clara said firmly. Savage is what they called the men who burned our barn with Samuel inside. Savage is... She stopped, memories threatening to overwhelm her. Taza shifted, leaning forward despite his injured leg. Your husband, the fire, not accident. No, he wouldn't sell to the mining company. Said the land had been in his family for generations. They offered 3 times its worth. But Samuel was stubborn. Said some things were worth more than money. Clara's voice grew bitter. He was right. It cost him everything. And you, they try to buy from you? The day after the funeral. Can you imagine? I could still smell the smoke, and there they were with their papers and promises. She laughed, a harsh sound. When I refused, they got less polite. Said a woman alone had no business trying to run a ranch. Said accidents happened all the time on the frontier. So you run, like a coward. No, Taza said sharply. Survivor is different. That night, Clara took a turn keeping watch while the others slept. Taza had protested, his leg, her shoulder, but she'd insisted. You've all done so much for me. Let me do this small thing. She sat by the door, the rifle across her knees as she'd seen Taza do. The night was quiet save for the pop of the fire and soft breathing of the sleepers. In the dim light, she could make out Taza's form, the rise and fall of his chest. Even in sleep, he seemed alert, ready. The dream came to her again as she dozed, not the full nightmare, just flashes, golden lamplight, rough hands. The taste of whiskey forced between her lips. The barn's sweet hay smell mixed with something else, something that made her stomach turn even now. She jerked awake to find Taza watching her, propped on one elbow. You should sleep, she whispered. Leg pains me, he said simply. And you make noise, frightened noise. Shame flooded her. I'm sorry, I didn't mean to wake you. Not first person to have night terrors in this lodge, he said. After soldiers took me, many moons before sleep came peaceful again. Clara hesitated, then asked, What did they do to you? His hand moved unconsciously to his back. Tried to make me white, cut hair, beat us for speaking Apache. When I refused to forget who I was, he shrugged. They had ways to encourage forgetting. The scars. Some outside, some inside. Inside ones heal slower. They sat in silence for a while. Then Clara found herself speaking, words she'd never said aloud. There was a barn dance. After harvest, Samuel had business in Denver. Wouldn't be back for days. I shouldn't have gone alone, but I was so tired of being cooped up, of being the proper rancher's wife. Taza waited, patient as stone. I danced, drank punch someone had spiked with whiskey. I didn't realize until too late. Then he was there, Jed Hartley, biggest landowner in the county. Handsome, charming. Said he'd see me home safe. Her voice cracked. He saw me home. All right, to his ranch, not mine. This Jed, he force you? Clara closed her eyes. I don't know. I was so confused, so dizzy from the drink. He was gentle at first, then insistent. And part of me, she couldn't finish, couldn't admit to the shameful heat that had risen in her, the way her body had betrayed every vow she'd made. Not your fault, Taza said quietly. Man who takes advantage of woman not thinking clear, he is without honor. But no, his voice was firm. I see guilt eating you like winter eats wood, but guilt belongs to him, not you. Clara felt tears sliding down her cheeks. There's more. The night left me with consequences. Taza's eyes dropped briefly to her still flat belly. I know. How? Well, you hold yourself. Well, you touch stomach when you think no one watches. Mary knows too. Are you going to throw me out? In winter? With injured shoulder? What kind of man you think I am? A good one, Clara whispered. Too good to be burdened with my troubles. Taza was quiet for a long moment. Then, when soldiers let me go, I think about ending my life. Everything taken, family, land, future. But Elder told me, your story not finished, Sky not done with you yet. Maybe Sky not done with you either. I don't believe in fate. Not fate, choice, every day. Choose to live or die. Choose to be bitter or find sweetness where it grows. You choose to live when you left town. Choose again now. Clara wiped her eyes, studying this man who'd shown her more kindness than she deserved. In the firelight, his scars seemed less like wounds and more like a map of survival. Without thinking, she reached out and touched his hand where it rested on his knee. He went very still, but didn't pull away. His skin was warm, calloused from years of hard work. For a moment, they stayed frozen like that, a connection neither expected nor fully understood. Then Mary stirred in her sleep, and Clara pulled back as if burned. "You should rest that leg," she said, voice unsteady. Taza nodded slowly. "And you should stop punishing yourself for other man's sin." He lay back down, but Clara felt his awareness like heat from the fire. She returned to her watch, rifle across her knees. But her thoughts were no longer on the past. Instead, they circled around the present, around unexpected kindness and dark eyes that saw too much, around the possibility that broken things might sometimes heal stronger than before. The news reached Redemption Creek on a bitter February morning, carried by Jake Morrison, the stableman who'd found Buttercup wandering back through the pass, half-frozen and wild-eyed. Within hours, everyone knew that the widow Whitmore had likely perished in the storm, her wagon found overturned and picked clean by scavengers. Jed Hartley received the news in his study, bourbon already in hand despite the early hour. He dismissed Morrison with a wave, waiting until the door closed before allowing his carefully composed expression to crack. "Damn fool woman," he muttered, draining his glass, but his hands shook as he poured another. 3 months. 3 months since that night at the harvest dance when everything had gone too far. He'd been drinking, they both had, and Clara had looked so beautiful in her blue dress, laughing at something one of the other ranchers had said, her husband away on business. And Jed had seen his chance. He'd only meant to dance with her, maybe steal a kiss, but then she'd swayed against him, eyes bright with whiskey and something else, and his control had snapped like dry kindling. The ride to his ranch was a blur of her soft protests and softer sighs, of his promises that he'd take care of her, that her husband would never know. But Samuel Whitmore had found out somehow. Maybe Clara had confessed. She'd always been too honest for her own good. Or maybe Samuel had simply seen the truth in his wife's guilty eyes. Either way, when Jed had approached him about selling the ranch 2 weeks later, Samuel had thrown him out bodily, threatening to shoot him if he ever came near Clara again. The fire that took Samuel's life a week after that? Pure accident, everyone said. A knocked-over lantern, hay too dry, flames too fast. But Jed knew the weight of coincidence, knew how convenient Samuel's death had been for certain interests. He hadn't ordered it, would never have gone that far, but he hadn't asked too many questions either. And then Clara had refused to sell, refused to even see him. He'd tried to apologize, to offer protection, to make things right the only way he knew how, with money and land and promises of security. But she'd sent back every letter unopened. Had the sheriff warned him off her property? Now she was gone, taking his child with her, because he was certain. The timing was right, and there'd been no one else. Clara Whitmore had been faithful to her husband in every way, except that one night when Jed had taken advantage of her trust and her loneliness. Boss, his foreman, Pete Sullivan, knocked and entered without waiting. "You want us to organize a search party? Spring thaw might reveal—" "Yes," Jed said immediately. "Full search come spring. I want her found and brought back for proper burial." Pete's expression was knowing. Everyone suspected there'd been something between Jed and the pretty widow, though none dared voice it. And if by some miracle she survived, holed up somewhere, "Then you bring her to me," Jed said quietly. "She's not in her right mind. Pete, traveling the pass in winter. Only a woman touched by grief would do such a thing. She needs help, protection." "Yes, sir. I'll start asking around the settlements, see if anyone's seen her." After Pete left, Jed walked to his window, staring out at the mountains that had swallowed Clara whole. She was out there somewhere. He could feel it. A woman like that didn't just disappear, and if she'd survived, if she was hiding, he thought of the child she might be carrying. His blood, his heir. His wife had given him 3 daughters before dying in childbirth with the 4th. He needed a son. And if Clara had one, "I'll find you," he said to the distant peaks. "Whatever it takes." Meanwhile, in the shelter hidden among the pines, Clara woke to morning sickness that sent her stumbling outside. The pregnancy was making itself known more each day, though the loose hide clothing concealed her changing body better than her old dresses would have. Mary followed her out, handing her a cup of pine needle tea when the heaving stopped. "This help," she said simply. "I carry 3 babies. Know the sickness." "3?" Clara wiped her mouth. "But you only have 2 children. First son born too early, when soldiers chase us from winter camp." Mary's voice was matter-of-fact, but Clara heard the old pain beneath. "No time to stop, to rest. Baby came in snow, lived 1 day. I'm so sorry." Mary shrugged. "Was long ago, but I tell you so you understand. You need rest, quiet. Baby needs mother strong, not running, not afraid. I can't stay here forever. Mary, I'm already too much burden." "Who says burden?" "Taza." Mary snorted. "My brother stubborn man, but not cruel. He know you need help," as if summoned by his name. Taza emerged from the forest, moving carefully but no longer limping. His leg had healed well over the past 2 weeks, leaving only a thin scar. He carried a deer haunch over his shoulder. "Fresh killed. Good hunting," he said, but his eyes found Clara immediately. "You sick again?" "It's nothing," Clara said quickly. "Is not nothing. Is life growing?" He set down the deer and approached them. "Mary, we need to talk, all of us." Inside the shelter, with the children sent to play by the creek, Taza spoke seriously. "Spring comes soon. Snow melts, passes open. People start moving, searching." Clara's stomach clenched. "You think they're looking for me? Rich man loses woman carrying his child. Yes, he looks. It might not be his," Clara said weakly. Taza's expression said he wasn't fooled. "You say husband gone to Denver. You know when child started. We both know truth." "What are you saying?" Mary demanded. "That we throw her out?" "No, I'm saying we need plan. Clara cannot hide here forever. And when white men come looking, they find Apache living illegal off reservation." He didn't need to finish. "I won't let you be punished for helping me." Clara said, "I'll leave. Find somewhere else." "Where?" "Town full of questions. Traveling alone. Pregnant. No husband. They send you back or worse. Then what do you suggest?" Taza was quiet for a long moment. Then, "Apache camp, 2 days north. Hidden valley where soldiers don't go. My mother's cousin leads them. They would take you in. But I'm white. You learn our ways. Work hard. Help with children. Sick ones. In camp. No one asks about past, only about what you give to people." Mary leaned forward. "Is dangerous journey, especially for her, now. More dangerous to stay. When snow melts fully. This place not hidden enough." Clara felt the weight of decision pressing on her. Stay and risk discovery, bringing danger to those who'd saved her, or venture deeper into the unknown, further from everything familiar. "What about you?" she asked. "Would you come too?" Something flickered in Taza's eyes. "My path different, but would see you safe there first." That night, Clara lay wakeful again, hand resting on her still flat belly. In a few months, it would be obvious. The child of her shame and secret desire would announce itself to the world. Among her own people, she'd be ruined, a fallen woman raising a bastard child. But among the Apache, Taza said, she might find acceptance. She thought of Jed, handsome, powerful, persuasive Jed who'd awaken things in her she hadn't known existed. Even now, Remembering his hands on her body brought a flush of heat and shame. She'd wanted him in that moment. Heaven help her. The whiskey had lowered her guard, but it hadn't created the attraction that had simmered between them for months. But want and love were different things. What she'd felt with Samuel had been steady, comfortable, safe. What she'd felt with Jed had been fire, burning hot and destructive. And what she felt now, when Taza looked at her with those knowing eyes, she didn't dare name it. A movement in the darkness caught her attention. Taza sat up, listening. Then she heard it too. Horses, distant but approaching. Her blood turned to ice. Taza moved swiftly, waking Mary with a touch. They worked in practiced silence, gathering essentials. Mary woke the children, keeping them quiet with a finger to her lips. "How many?" Clara whispered. 3, maybe 4. Moving careful." Taza handed her a knife. "If something happens, you take children and run north, follow creek, don't look back. I won't leave you." "You will." His voice was iron. "For child, if nothing else." They waited in tense silence as the horses drew nearer. Then a voice called out, "Speaking Apache." Taza's shoulders relaxed fractionally. He answered, and Clara recognized relief in his tone. 3 Apache men entered the clearing, leading their horses. They spoke rapidly with Taza, gesturing southward. Clara caught a few words she'd learned: soldiers, searching, danger. One of the men, older with gray threading his braids, studied Clara with interest. He asked Taza something that made him stiffen. "He asks if you my woman." Taza translated reluctantly. Clara's cheeks burned. "What did you tell him?" "Truth. That you are guest, under protection." The older man spoke again. Longer this time. Taza's responses grew heated, but the elder raised a hand for silence. He approached Clara, circling her once before nodding. "He says you bring trouble." Taza translated. "Soldiers look for white woman, if found here. All punished." "I know. I'm sorry. I'll leave." The elder interrupted, speaking directly to her in broken English. "You carry child?" Clara's hand moved instinctively to her stomach. "Yes, child's father. He looked for you." Maybe, probably." The elder studied her for another long moment, then spoke in Apache to Taza. Whatever he said made Taza's jaw clench, but he nodded once, sharply. "What did he say?" Clara asked when the men had gone. "Said choice must be made soon, very soon. That if you stay, must be as Apache, not white woman hiding." He paused. "And that if soldiers come, he will not protect you unless—" "Unless what?" Taza turned away. "Is nothing. Rest now. Tomorrow we talk more." But Clara had seen the look in his eyes, the way his hands had fisted at whatever the elder had suggested, and she thought she knew what price might be asked for her protection among his people. The question was whether she was willing to pay it, and whether Taza would let her. Spring arrived with vengeance, turning the mountain paths into rivers of mud and melting snow. Jed Hartley sat astride his best horse, watching his hired trackers work their way through the remnants of Clara's overturned wagon. 3 weeks of searching had yielded nothing but weathered wood and scraps of fabric. "Found something, Mr. Hartley," called Tom Brennan, one of the best trackers money could hire. He held up a water-damaged book, a Bible. Jed dismounted and took it, recognizing Clara's neat handwriting on the inside cover. Clara Elizabeth Whitmore, in fading ink. His chest tightened. "Any sign of—" He couldn't finish the sentence. "Nobody, if that's what you're asking. But strange thing, some of these supplies were gathered up neat-like. See here?" Brennan pointed to marks in the earth. "Someone came back for things, and these tracks—" He frowned. "Moccasins, not boots. Indians." Pete Sullivan spat. Probably found her already dead, scavenged what they could. But Jed studied the tracks more carefully. They told a different story. Someone had fashioned a travois, dragged weight away from the scene. She might have survived. Someone took her. Apache, by the look of it. Brennan said, There's a few bands still hiding in these mountains, avoiding the reservation. If they found her, then we find them, Jed said firmly. Double the reward. I want every trapper, every trader, everyone who moves through these mountains knowing I'm looking for a white woman among the Apache. Boss, Pete said carefully, even if she's alive, after months with savages, she might not be herself anymore. Might be kinder to, she's carrying my child, Jed snapped, the admission torn from him. I don't give a damn about kind. I want her found. The men exchanged glances but said nothing. They'd suspected as much, but hearing it confirmed put a different color on things. A man had rights to his offspring, after all. And if the widow Whitmore had been compromised, well, that made her Jed's responsibility, didn't it? There's something else, Brennan said. Heard tell in the last settlement that an army patrol is planning a sweep through here next month, looking for renegade Apache, if your lady is with them when the soldiers arrive. Jed's jaw tightened. He knew what happened to white women found with Indians, the assumptions made, the brutal rescues that sometimes left the women wishing they'd died in the wilderness instead. And the Apache who harbored them faced worse, hanging if they were lucky, massacre if they weren't. Then we find her first, he said. Whatever it takes. In the hidden valley 2 days north, Clara knelt by the stream, washing clothes alongside the Apache women. Her hands were red from the cold water, but she didn't complain. Over the past weeks, she'd learned that acceptance here came through work, through contribution, through silence when silence was called for. The elder who'd visited Taza's shelter, Standing Bear, had allowed her to stay, but the price had been steep. Not what she'd feared in that dark moment, but challenging in its own way. She must live as Apache, speak their language, follow their ways. And when the child came, it would be raised Apache too. Your hand's too soft, laughed Singing Dove, one of the younger women who'd befriended her. Soon they be hard like ours. Clara smiled, though her heart wasn't in it. Each day took her further from her old life, made return more impossible. Her body was changing too. The sickness had passed, replaced by a rounding that even the loose clothing couldn't quite hide. The Apache women knew, of course. They watched her with knowing eyes, sometimes touching their own bellies in sympathy. Taza had kept his word, escorting her safely to the camp before disappearing back to his own shelter with Mary and the children. He came to check on her once a week, bringing meat or hides, but their conversations were formal now, witnessed by others. The easy intimacy of those weeks in his shelter had vanished like morning mist. You think of him again, Singing Dove observed. The one who brought you here. I think of many things. Clara deflected. He is good man, strong, but carries much pain. The woman wrung out a shirt with practiced efficiency. Some say he waits for you to heal. Others say he waits for nothing, hopes for nothing. What do you say? Singing Dove studied her. I say white woman brings complications. But maybe complications what Taza needs. He too long alone with ghosts. That evening, Clara joined the communal meal, sitting with the women as was proper. The men ate separately, discussing something that had them all tense. She caught fragments, soldiers, searches, danger coming. Standing Bear rose and addressed the group in Apache. Clara understood enough to grasp the essence. Patrols were increasing, looking for someone. They might need to move camp deeper into the mountains. Then his eyes found Clara. The one you carry, he said in careful English. Father is powerful man. Clara nodded reluctantly. He searches, offers much gold for information. Standing Bear's expression was grave. This brings danger to all. I'll leave, Clara said immediately. I won't let harm come to your people because of me. Where you go, back to him. No, never. Then you stay, but must decide soon what you are. White woman hiding, or woman of the people. His eyes moved meaningfully to where Taza sat with the other men. Some choices protect better than others. That night, unable to sleep, Clara walked to the edge of camp where a sentry kept watch. The stars were brilliant, unmarred by smoke or town lights. Somewhere out there, Jed was searching for her, She could feel it like a storm approaching. "You should rest." Taza's voice came from behind her. "Walking at night not safe for you now." She turned to find him emerging from shadow, moving with that silent grace that still startled her. "I couldn't sleep. The baby is restless tonight." His eyes dropped to her rounded belly, now obvious in profile. "May I?" Clara nodded, breath catching as he placed one large hand gently on her stomach. The baby chose that moment to kick, and Taza's eyes widened slightly. "Strong," he said. "Fighter already, like its mother needs to be," Clara said bitterly. Taza, Standing Bear, said, "I know what he said, what everyone says." He removed his hand, the absence of its warmth immediate. "They want me to take you as wife. Think it solve problem, make you Apache, give child father, protect you from white law." Clara's heart hammered. "And you? What do you want?" "Does not matter what I want. It matters to me." He was silent so long she thought he wouldn't answer. When he spoke, his voice was rough. "I think things I should not think, want things that bring only pain. You carry another man's child, love another man still, maybe. I don't love Jed," Clara said firmly. "What happened between us was heat and mistake and wine, nothing more. But he owns piece of your heart, or your shame, sometimes same thing." Clara couldn't deny it. Jed haunted her, not with love but with the memory of desire, the knowledge of her own weakness. He woke something in me I didn't know existed, something wild and selfish and wrong. When I'm with you, I feel— "What?" "Safe," she whispered. "But also that wildness again, different but just as strong, and it terrifies me." Taza stepped closer, close enough that she could see the pulse beating in his throat. "You think I not feel same? You think I not lie awake remembering your hand on mine, your eyes in firelight? But you are wounded, bird, need healing, not right to—" "I'm not a child," Clara interrupted. "Stop deciding what's right for me. Everyone my whole life has decided for me. My parents, Samuel, Jed, now Standing Bear. For once, I want to choose for myself." "Then what you choose?" Clara reached up, fingertips tracing one of the scars on his face. He stood absolutely still, but she felt the tension in him like a drawn bow. "I choose to stop running from what I feel, to stop being ashamed of wanting something, someone good." "Clara." Her name was a warning, a plea. "I know the complications. I know what people will say, what both our peoples will think. I don't care anymore. I'm already ruined by their standards." "At least let me be ruined for something real." She rose on her toes and kissed him. For a heartbeat. He didn't respond. Then his arms came around her, careful of her changing body but firm enough to anchor her against him. The kiss was nothing like her experiences with Samuel's dutiful affection or Jed's demanding passion. This was deep and slow and devastating, like sinking into warm water after weeks in the cold. When they broke apart, both breathing unsteadily, Taza rested his forehead against hers. "This changes everything. Everything's already changed." Clara said, "The question is what we do about it." Before he could answer, a shout rang out from the sentry. Riders approaching, many of them. Taza pushed Clara behind him, hand going to his knife. But the riders were Apache, scouts returning from the southern passes. Their news was grim. Soldiers were massing for a major sweep, and worse, white civilians rode with them, including a man matching Jed Hartley's description. 3 days, the lead scout reported. Maybe 4. They know someone here. Standing Bear called for immediate evacuation. The camp would scatter, each family group going different directions to confuse pursuit. But his eyes found Clara in the crowd. "You," he said, "you must decide now. Stay and endanger all, or go with Taza. As his woman, you might pass unnoticed. As white captive, you bring death to us." Clara felt every eye on her. The choice that had seemed so clear moments ago now carried the weight of lives. She looked at Taza, saw him waiting, letting her choose despite what it might cost. "I'll go with Taza," she said clearly. "As his wife, if he'll have me, and my child will be raised knowing both its heritages, but choosing its own path when the time comes." Taza stepped forward, taking her hand before the entire camp. "I take this woman," he said in Apache, then repeated in English. "She is mine to protect, mine to provide for. Her child is my child. Any who challenge this, challenge me." No one did. The pass stretched before them like a white serpent, treacherous with late spring snow and hidden ice. Clara clung to Taza's back, her arms wrapped around his waist as he picked their way carefully through the narrow trail. Behind them, Mary led the children on foot, their small band moving like ghosts through the dawn light. They'd left the camp 2 days ago, splitting off from the main group as planned. Standing Bear had given them directions to another sanctuary further west, where mixed families, Apache and Mexican, Apache and white, had carved out a precarious existence beyond the reach of both reservation agents and army patrols. But first, they had to survive the crossing. "Rest here," Taza said, finding a sheltered spot beneath an overhang of rock. His breath came in clouds as he helped Clara down, his hands lingering on her waist to steady her. The pregnancy made everything harder, her balance uncertain, her stamina depleted. But she didn't complain, knowing every moment of delay increased their danger. Mary unpacked food while the children huddled together for warmth. Little Wolf tried to look brave, but Clara saw how his eyes darted to every sound. Singing Bird pressed against her mother's side, thumb in her mouth despite being too old for such comfort. "How much further?" Clara asked, accepting dried meat from Mary. "By nightfall. We clear worst of it," Taza said, but his eyes were troubled as he scanned the sky. "If weather holds..." It didn't hold. By midday, clouds had rolled in like a gray blanket, heavy with the promise of snow. The wind picked up, cutting through their layers of hide and wool. Clara felt the baby shift restlessly, responding to her tension. "Storm coming fast," Mary said, pulling her children closer. "Need shelter." Taza nodded grimly. He knew these mountains, knew where caves and overhangs might offer protection, but reaching them meant leaving the main trail, risking getting lost in the whiteout conditions threatening to descend. They pushed on, racing against the storm. Clara walked now, refusing to slow them down by making Taza carry her. Each step jarred through her body, her back aching, her swollen feet protesting in the worn boots. Then she heard it. Horses, somewhere below them on the trail. Taza heard it too, freezing mid-step. He motioned for silence, guiding them off the path into a cluster of snow-laden pines. The horses came into view, 5 riders, moving steadily upward. Clara's heart lurched as she recognized the lead figure. Jed, dressed in a heavy coat but unmistakable in his bearing. That confident posture she knew too well. With him rode Pete Sullivan and 3 men she didn't recognize. Hard men, armed with rifles and purpose. They were following the band's trail, would pass directly by their hiding spot. Taza's hand found hers, squeezing once in warning. Mary had covered Singing Bird's mouth, keeping the child silent. They crouched in the snow, barely breathing, as the riders approached. "Trail's fresher here," one of the men called out. "They can't be more than a few hours ahead." "Good." Jed's voice carried clearly in the thin air. "I want this finished before the storm hits." "What about the Army Patrol?" Pete asked. "They won't take kindly to us operating in their territory. Let me worry about the Army. They want the Apache cleared out. They won't ask too many questions about how it happens." Jed's voice hardened. "I want the woman alive and unharmed. The Indians, use your judgment." Clara bit her lip to keep from gasping. He was sanctioning murder. She realized. Anyone protecting her was expendable in his eyes. The riders passed so close she could have reached out and touched Jed's boot. She smelled his familiar cologne, saw the determined set of his jaw. This wasn't the charming man who'd danced with her, who'd whispered sweet promises. This was someone she didn't recognize, driven by possession and pride. After they passed, Taza waited long minutes before moving. When he finally stood, his expression was grim. "Cannot use main trail now. They watch for us." "The storm," Mary protested. "Children cannot survive if we get lost. Cannot survive if those men find us either." He looked at Clara. You strong enough for hard climbing? She nodded, though her body screamed otherwise. I'll manage. They left the trail, plunging into virgin snow. Taza led breaking path, with Clara following in his footsteps. Mary brought up the rear with the children, making sure no one fell behind. The storm hit with full fury an hour later. Snow drove sideways, visibility dropping to mere feet. Clara stumbled, caught herself, stumbled again. Her world narrowed to Taza's back, to the next step, the next breath. When she fell the third time, Taza turned back, without a word. He lifted her, cradling her against his chest. No, she protested weakly. Too heavy. Quiet, he said. Save strength. She buried her face in his neck, breathing in his scent of leather and pine. His heartbeat was steady against her cheek, his arm sure despite the treacherous footing. She'd never felt so vulnerable, so dependent on another's strength. Time blurred. The storm raged, turning the world into a howling void. Clara drifted in and out of awareness, jolted back by particularly hard winds or Taza's voice speaking to Mary, ensuring she still followed. Then, blessed relief, a cave, barely visible in the cliff face. Taza ducked inside, setting Clara down gently before going back for Mary and the children. Soon they were all huddled in the relative warmth, listening to the storm rage outside. Fire? Little Wolf asked hopefully. No smoke, Taza said. They too close. He pulled Clara against him, sharing body heat. All stay close, stay warm. They arranged themselves in a tight group, children in the middle, adults around them. Clara found herself pressed between Taza and the cave wall, his arms around her, her back to his chest. Despite everything, the cold, the fear, the ache in her body, she felt a moment of peace. The baby, he murmured in her ear. Strong, she assured him, taking his hand and placing it where she felt movement. Like its mother, you said. Like both parents, he corrected. Real father and chosen father. The words sent warmth through her that had nothing to do with shared body heat. Do you mean that? About being its father? Apache way, man who claims child, raises child, is father. Blood less important than choice. His hand spread protectively over her belly. I choose this child. Choose its mother. If she let me. She lets you, Clara whispered. She chooses you too. They dozed fitfully, jerking awake at every sound. Once, Clara thought she heard horses, voices calling through the storm, but the wind distorted everything, made ghosts of every noise. Near dawn, the storm finally exhausted itself. Taza ventured out, returning with news that snow had obscured all tracks. They had a chance now, if they moved fast. But as they prepared to leave, Clara doubled over with a sharp pain. Not labor, too early for that, but a warning. Her body had endured too much. Cannot travel, Mary said firmly after examining her. Baby in distress, need rest, warmth, proper food. The men, let them search, Mary said. Storm scattered everything. They not find us if we careful. Taza made the decision. We stay. One day, maybe two, then move at night if needed. He ventured out periodically, checking for signs of pursuit, hunting when possible. Clara rested, forcing herself to eat the broth Mary prepared, to think calm thoughts for the baby's sake. On the second night, voices woke them. Jed's search party, taking shelter in another cave nearby, their voices carried in the still air. Waste of time, Pete was saying. No one could survive that storm in the open. She survived. Jed insisted. I know it. That Apache buck has her, and I'll find them if I have to tear apart every mountain in the territory. Why? Another voice, frustrated. She's just one woman. Plenty of others would warm your bed willing enough. The sound of flesh hitting flesh, a punch thrown, scuffling. Then Jed's voice, cold with fury. Because she's mine, because she's carrying my son, because no one, especially not some reservation-jumping savage, takes what belongs to me. Clara pressed her hand to her mouth, tears sliding silently down her cheeks. Taza pulled her tighter against him, his body tense with controlled rage. "We leave before dawn," he whispered. "You strong enough?" She nodded. Anything was better than listening to Jed reduce her to property, their child to a possession to be claimed. In the pre-dawn darkness, they slipped away like shadows. The going was slow, treacherous, but Clara found strength in desperation. Each step took her further from Jed's version of her life, closer to something she could barely imagine but desperately wanted. By the time the sun rose, they were miles away, descending the western slope toward the hidden valley Taza promised waited below. Clara looked back once at the peaks behind them, then forward to whatever future they could carve from wilderness and will. The baby kicked, strong and insistent. "We're going to make it," she whispered. "All of us." Taza's hand found hers. Together, they walked toward their uncertain tomorrow. The canyon narrowed ahead, forcing them into single file along a ledge barely wide enough for a horse. Clara pressed close to the rock wall, trying not to look at the drop below. They'd been walking for hours, the promised valley still somewhere beyond these endless stone corridors. Then she heard it. Horses approaching from behind, moving fast despite the dangerous terrain. Taza heard it too, his hand going immediately to his rifle. "Here," Mary hissed, pulling the children into a crevice in the rock. But there was nowhere for Clara and Taza to hide. The ledge offered no concealment, no escape route except forward or back. Jed rounded the bend first, his face lighting with triumph when he spotted them. Behind him came Pete and two others, guns already drawn. "Clara," Jed called out, his voice carrying that familiar confidence. "Thank God we found you. Step away from him, darling. You're safe now." "I'm not going with you," Clara said, surprised by the steadiness of her own voice. "You're not thinking clearly." Jed dismounted, hands spread in a gesture of reasonableness. "Look at you, pregnant, exhausted, following some savage into the wilderness." "This isn't you, Clara." "You don't know me," she shot back. "You never did. You saw what you wanted, a conquest, a pretty widow to add to your collection." His face darkened. "I'm trying to do right by you. That's my child you're carrying. My son needs his father's name, his father's protection. This child has a father." Taza spoke for the first time. "Me." Jed's hand moved to his pistol. "You dare! Stop!" Clara stepped between them. "Jed, please, just let us go. Tell everyone I died in the storm. You can remarry, have legitimate heirs. Forget I existed." "Forget?" Jed laughed, but there was no humor in it. "You think I can forget that night? The way you felt in my arms, the sounds you made when I—" "Enough." Taza's voice was deadly quiet. "The savage speaks." Pete sneered. "Boss, let me handle this. We can make it look like he kidnapped her. Forced her. No one would question." The shot came from above. Mary, emerging from cover with an old Spencer rifle trained on the men. "Anyone moves, I shoot again," she called down. "Next one not be warning." A whole nest of them. One of Jed's men muttered, "This is getting complicated, boss." But Jed's eyes never left Clara. "Is this what you want? To live like an animal in the mountains? To raise our child as a half-breed, never belonging anywhere? Better than raising it as your bastard," Clara said. "Better than living a lie, pretending respectability while knowing the truth, that you forced yourself on a drunk woman who couldn't consent." "Forced?" Jed's face flushed. "You wanted it. You practically begged." Taza moved then, faster than Clara had ever seen him move. One moment he stood beside her. The next he had Jed against the canyon wall, knife at his throat. "You speak such words again. You never speak at all." Taza growled. Pete raised his gun, but Mary's rifle tracked to him. "Try it," she invited. For a long moment, they stood frozen, violence balanced on a knife's edge. Clara could see it all unfolding, blood on stone, bodies falling, the children witnessing horror that would scar them forever. "No," she said firmly. "Taza, let him go. Clara, please, for me, for our child." Slowly, Taza stepped back, though his knife remained in hand. Jed straightened his coat, trying to recover his dignity. "You're making a mistake," he told Clara. "When you come to your senses, when you realize what you've thrown away—" "I've thrown away nothing," Clara interrupted. "But I've found something real. Someone who sees me as a person, not a possession. Someone who chose to protect me without expectation of reward. He's using you." Jed insisted. "Apache raiders always take white women. It's what they do." Clara actually laughed. "You really believe that, don't you? That no man could want me for myself, only as some trophy or conquest?" She shook her head. "I pity you. Jed, you'll never understand what you're missing. The difference between taking and being given, between owning and sharing." She reached into her pocket, pulled out her wedding ring, the one Taza had recovered from the wagon. "Here," she said, tossing it at Jed's feet. "Payment for your trouble. Now go, before someone gets hurt." Jed stared at the ring glinting in the dust. When he looked up, his handsome face was ugly with rage. "This isn't over. I have rights." "You have nothing," Taza cut in. "She is my wife by Apache law. Child is mine by my claiming. You touch either one, every Apache in these mountains hunt you like dog you are. Savage law means nothing to civilized men." Pete spat. "Then be civilized and leave." Mary called down. "Before savage law, only law left." Jed bent slowly, picked up the ring. He turned it in his fingers, and Clara saw him making calculations, the cost of pursuit, the risk of scandal, the effort required versus potential gain. "You'll regret this," he said finally. "When you're old before your time, worn out from primitive living, watching your half-breed child rejected by both worlds, remember you chose this." "I'll remember," Clara said softly. "Every day, with gratitude." Jed mounted his horse with sharp, angry movements. "We're leaving," he told his men. "She's made her choice. Let her live with it." "But boss, I said we're leaving." His voice brooked no argument. They watched the riders disappear around the bend, listened until the sound of hooves faded completely. Only then did Clara's knees buckle, the strength that had sustained her suddenly gone. Taza caught her, held her as she shook with delayed reaction. "He's done," he murmured. "He not bother you again." "You don't know him," Clara whispered. "He doesn't give up easily. Neither do I," Taza said simply. Mary climbed down with the children, who immediately ran to Clara, hugging her legs. Little Wolf looked up at Taza with hero worship in his eyes. "You brave like warrior," the boy said. "Faced down 5 men with guns. Not brave," Taza corrected. "Desperate. Difference important to remember." They resumed their journey. But Clara noticed Taza's increased vigilance, the way he paused at every blind corner, listened for pursuit. The confrontation had shaken him more than he showed. As afternoon waned, they finally crested a ridge and saw it, a valley cupped between peaks, green with spring growth. A stream wound through its heart, and Clara could see smoke rising from several dwellings, a mix of Apache wickiups and Mexican-style adobes. "Haven Valley," Taza said. "Place for those who don't fit anywhere else." As they descended, people emerged to watch their arrival. Clara saw the mix Taza had described, Apache features blended with Mexican, white, even what might have been Chinese. Children of all shades played together while women worked side by side. An elderly woman approached, her face weathered but kind. She studied Clara with interest, then spoke to Taza in a mixture of Apache and Spanish. "She welcomes you," Taza translated. "Says any woman who walks the hard path to get here has earned her place." "What did you tell her about me?" "Nothing yet, but she sees much." He gestured to a small adobe set apart from the others. "That one empty. We can use if you want." "We?" Clara looked at him. "You're staying? Where else I go?" He seemed genuinely puzzled. "My wife is here. My child comes soon. This is home now." "My wife." The word sent warmth through her, despite everything. "We're not really married. Not by any law that—" "Tomorrow we fix that." Taza interrupted. "Maria Gonzalez does marriages. Her husband was priest before he died. Is legal enough for here. And if Jed comes back, if he brings the law, then we deal with it. Together." He touched her face gently. You think I let you go now, after what you risked for me? I risked it for myself, Clara corrected. For the chance to choose my own life. Good choice, Mary said, herding the children toward their new home. Now come. Baby needs rest, food. Plenty time for talk later. As Clara followed them into the adobe, she looked back once at the ridge they'd crossed. Somewhere beyond those peaks, Jed was riding back to his ordered life, his proper place in society. Let him keep it, she thought. She'd found something better, messier, uncertain, difficult, but real. That night, as she lay on a simple pallet with Taza's arms around her and the baby moving strong within her, Clara whispered a prayer of gratitude, not to the stern God of her childhood, but to whatever force had brought her through storm and danger to this moment. No regrets? Taza asked softly. None, she said, and meant it. Only hope. Outside, the valley settled into peaceful darkness. Tomorrow would bring new challenges, building a life, birthing a child, forging a family from fractured pieces. But tonight, Clara Whitmore, soon to be Clara Redhawk, finally felt she was exactly where she belonged. The baby kicked as if in agreement, and Taza's hand covered hers where it rested on her belly. Whatever came next, they would face it together. It was enough. It was everything. The pain started at dawn, 3 weeks after their arrival in Haven Valley. Clara woke to wetness spreading beneath her and a cramping that took her breath away. Beside her, Taza stirred immediately. Is time? He asked, already alert. I think so. Clara gasped as another wave hit. Within minutes, the small adobe filled with women. Maria Gonzalez, who'd married them in a simple ceremony 2 weeks prior, took charge with the authority of one who delivered dozens of babies. Mary was there too, and Singing Dove from the Apache camp, and Rosa, a Mexican woman who'd married an Apache scout. Men out, Maria ordered. This is women's work. Taza hesitated, clearly torn between tradition and concern. Clara grabbed his hand. Stay, she whispered. Please, I need you. Maria clicked her tongue disapprovingly, but didn't argue. She'd learned that this mixed couple did things their own way. The labor was long, hard. Clara had helped with birthing on the ranch, but experiencing it herself was different. The pain came in waves that threatened to drown her, each one stronger than the last. Taza never left her side, letting her grip his hands until her nails drew blood, wiping sweat from her face, murmuring encouragement in a mixture of English and Apache. Something wrong, Maria said after hours had passed. Baby turned wrong way. Fear spiked through Clara's exhaustion. Breech births in these conditions, without a doctor. Let me. Singing Dove stepped forward. My grandmother taught me the old way to turn babies. Maria looked skeptical but moved aside. Singing Dove's hands were gentle but sure as she felt Clara's belly. Speaking softly in Apache, Clara felt pressure, movement, a strange shifting sensation. Now, Singing Dove said, baby ready now. With the next contraction, Clara felt the difference. Progress, finally. But she was so tired, had nothing left to give. Look at me, Taza commanded, his face close to hers. You strongest woman I know, crossed mountains in winter, faced down men with guns. You can do this. I can't. You can. For baby. For us. His dark eyes held hers, willing strength into her. I hear. Not letting go. Clara found reserves she didn't know existed. Pushed when Maria told her to push. Rested when she could. Always anchored by Taza's presence. Time ceased to matter. There was only the work of bringing life into the world. Then, finally, a cry. High and strong and absolutely perfect. A girl, Maria announced, placing the squalling infant on Clara's chest. Small but fierce. Clara stared down at her daughter through tears. Dark hair like Jed's, but her nose, her chin. The baby's skin was pale with that newborn redness, somewhere between her fairness and her biological father's darker tones. She beautiful, Taza said softly, one finger stroking the baby's cheek with infinite gentleness. What name? Clara had thought about this. In her old life, she would have chosen something proper, Elizabeth or Catherine or Anne, but that life was gone. Hope, she said. Hope Sarah Redhawk, for the future, and for my mother who would have loved her despite everything. Taza nodded approval. In Apache tradition, he would give the child another name when she was older, a name that matched her spirit. But for now, Hope was perfect. The weeks that followed blurred together in a haze of nursing, sleeping when she could, learning the rhythms of new motherhood. The women of Haven Valley helped, sharing duties, teaching Clara their various traditions for baby care. Hope thrived, growing round and alert, her eyes settling into a green that matched Clara's own. Taza was a devoted father, carrying Hope in a cradleboard on his back while he worked, singing to her in Apache when she fussed, showing a tenderness that made Clara fall in love with him all over again. Watching him with their daughter, for Hope was theirs in every way that mattered, healed something in Clara she hadn't known was broken. 2 months after Hope's birth, they were sitting by the stream in the evening cool when riders appeared on the ridge. Clara's heart clenched. Had Jed returned? But these were Apache, and their faces were grim. Standing Bear was among them. He spoke rapidly to Taza, gesturing back the way they'd come. Clara caught enough to understand. Soldiers had hit the main camp, scattered the people. Some were dead, others captured for forced return to the reservation. "We need fighters," Standing Bear said in English, looking at Taza. "Your skills needed." Clara saw the war in Taza's face. Duty to his people against duty to his family. She made the choice for him. "Go," she said. "They need you. Clara." "We'll be safe here. The people will help me with Hope." She touched his face. "This is who you are. I won't ask you to be less." He kissed her hard, kissed Hope's forehead gently. "Few days only. Come back soon." But days turned to weeks. News filtered in sporadically, skirmishes with soldiers, families fleeing toward Mexico. Taza leading raids to free captured Apache from cavalry escorts. Clara tried not to worry, focused on Hope, on surviving each day. Then came the morning when Jed Hartley rode into Haven Valley. He came alone this time, hands visible and empty of weapons. The men of the settlement surrounded him quickly, but he made no aggressive moves. "I want to talk to Clara," he said. "Just talk. I give my word." They brought him to her under heavy guard. Clara received him outside her adobe. Hope, sleeping against her chest in a carrier singing dove, had made. She saw Jed's eyes go immediately to the baby. Saw something flicker across his face. "She's beautiful," he said quietly. "Looks like you. What do you want, Jed?" He dismounted slowly, keeping his hands in sight. "I came to say goodbye, and to apologize." Clara blinked, surprised. This wasn't the Jed she knew. "I've had time to think," he continued. "About that night, about what I did. You were right. I took advantage. Convinced myself it was mutual, but—" He shook his head. "I'm sorry, Clara, for everything." "Why now?" Clara asked, suspicious. "What's changed?" "I'm getting married," Jed said. "A banker's daughter from Denver. Good match, good woman. But I couldn't start that life with this hanging over me." He reached into his coat, slowly, and pulled out a leather pouch. "This is for the child. For her education, her future, whatever you need." Clara didn't take it. "We don't need your money. Please, let me do this one thing right." His voice held genuine regret. "I know I can't undo the past, but maybe I can help her future be easier. Her future is here, with people who love her for who she is, not what she represents. And when she's older, when she wants to see the world beyond these mountains." Jed set the pouch on a rock. "Just think about it, for her sake." He turned to go, then paused. Does she have a name?" "Hope," Clara said after a moment. "Hope Sarah Redhawk. Redhawk, his name." Jed nodded slowly. "He's a fortunate man. I hope he knows that." "He does, and I'm a fortunate woman." Jed mounted his horse. "Be happy. Clara, you deserve it." He looked once more at Hope. "Both of you do," as he rode away. Clara felt a chapter of her life closing. The man who'd haunted her dreams, who'd driven her into the wilderness, was just a man after all. Flawed, capable of growth, moving on with his life as she had with hers. A week later, Taza returned, thinner, with the new scars, but whole. He swept Clara and Hope into his arms, holding them like he'd never let go. "Is over?" Clara asked. "For now. Some go to reservation, some to Mexico, some—" He didn't finish, but she understood. Some would never go anywhere again. That night, they sat outside their adobe, Hope sleeping peacefully between them. The stars were brilliant overhead, the valley quiet around them. Clara told Taza about Jed's visit, showed him the money pouch. "You want to keep it?" he asked. "I don't know. Part of me wants nothing from him, but part thinks of hope, of opportunities she might want someday. Then we keep, not for us, for her to choose when she's old enough." He pulled Clara close. "Her choice, like you choose, like we all choose." Clara leaned into his warmth, feeling the solid reality of the life they'd built. It wasn't the life she'd planned, certainly not the one society would approve, but it was real and true, and theirs. "No more running," she said. "No more hiding. This is home." "Yes," Taza agreed. "This home." Hope stirred, making soft baby sounds. Clara lifted her to nurse, and Taza began to sing softly, an Apache lullaby about stars and mountains and children who would grow strong and free. The melody drifted across the valley, a promise and a prayer. They'd crossed impossible passes, survived storms both natural and human. They'd chosen each other against all odds and expectations. Now, in this hidden valley where misfits made families and love transcended boundaries, they would raise their daughter to be bridge between worlds. The future stretched before them, uncertain but no longer fearsome. They would face it as they'd faced everything else, together. And that, Clara knew as she watched her husband sing their daughter to sleep under infinite stars, was the greatest choice of all. In the distance, coyotes called to each other across the ridges. But here in Haven Valley, all was peaceful. Clara Whitmore had become Clara Redhawk, and in losing everything she thought she wanted, she'd found everything she needed. The transformation was complete. The journey, in many ways, was just beginning. Thank you all for listening to this tale of love, survival, and redemption in the Old West. I'm curious to know where in the world you're enjoying these Wild West stories. Please share your location in the comments below. Don't forget to subscribe to Wild West Campfire for more authentic frontier tales. And let me know your thoughts on Clara and Taza's journey. Did their story touch your heart as much as it touched mine in the telling?